Hey Rachel, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Given the circumstances, we're alive. It's a bonus.
Alive is our bar is really low, but yes, alive's a very good place to start, and hopefully will that'll improve as our bar will go higher as
Yeah.
time goes on.
Okay,
So
for the sake of the people already joining us, I suggest we just start, shall we?
go for it.
Okay. So, hi everybody. My name is Mirit Hoffman. I'm an attorney and a gerontologist, and my main focus is estate planning and elder law, which means preparing wills and enduring power of attorneys, dealing with people who have dual citizenships, Israeli and the US, advising on estate planning and some US tax issues. And I host discussions called Golden Topics, where we discuss significant crossroads for seniors. And with me is the lovely Rachel Weinstein. Hi, Rachel. Why don't you introduce yourself?
All righty. So my name is Rachel Weinstein. I am a licensed clinical social worker in Israel, and I'm also licensed in Illinois. And I work with a variety of folks, people who are themselves elderly, people whose parents are elderly, surrounding all sorts of issues related to elder care. I also work with folks within the LGBTQ community and their families and what it's like is again, particularly in the, not exclusively, but particularly in the Jewish community, what it's like with those two issues in mind. Sorry, I got a little tongue tied there. And also with bereavement and grief and all sorts of adjustment type issues. So it's a pretty wide breadth of things. And yeah, and I'm glad to be joining my buddy on these podcasts. So
Yeah, we've been doing this podcast for a while. It's called Caring for an
yeah.
Aging Parent. And today we're going to be talking about losing a loved one to dementia. So why don't you start, Rachel, with that?
Okay. So so it's not uncommon for people to say if a parent has dementia, and advanced dementia, whatever that means for each person, to say, I've lost my mom or I've lost my dad. That's not them. They're not there anymore. I've lost them. And sometimes, excuse me, people say that when their parent is still up and mobile. Other times it's when they are, very much, unresponsive and present, but not able to communicate. And so, excuse me, one of the examples that will, I think, live in my mind forever. It was a difficult challenge for a nursing home staff. I used to work in a nursing home, and I was a hospice social worker too. It was an interesting situation to an interesting solution to a very challenging problem. There was a man in one of the nursing homes I was in who kept going in and out of, he would walk in and out of other people's rooms. And understandably, the female, patients in the nursing home were like terrified, like, get this man out of my room. Talking an elderly man going into all the different rooms. But he was so friendly and nobody understood, like, why are you making friends? Like, what's happening? We spoke to his family. He was a doctor and he was doing rounds in his pajamas or in his whatever clothing or his regular clothing. He hadn't lost his doctorness, and so he was unaware that he was a patient. So they couldn't get him to stop going in and out of rooms. It wasn't the kind of thing where they weren't going to just drug him and keep him in bed. That was, absolutely ridiculous. So between the social work staff and the art therapy, the recreation staff, they came up with a plan. And what they did was they gave him a pad and whatchamacallit, oh, I'm so tongue tied today. A pad of paper basically on a clipboard. Thank you. Couldn't think of the word. And they gave him a pen and they let him know what rooms he could go into. So he wasn't allowed to keep going into other people's rooms because that was a violation of their privacy. Everyone's dementia was, then they were afraid there was an attacker. It just got really messy. But they let him know where he could go, and he would go in and he would see his patients and he would ask them how they were feeling and he would make a note, and it was all scribbled. One could say he was very much a doctor with the scribbles, and he would just go to the next room. And then eventually they would guide him and they started calling him doctor. He responded well. And everyone was, I wouldn't say, and everyone was happy. That's it. but they found a creative way, because even though he was clearly unable to be a practicing doctor, who he was still there at his core. And he was really friendly. He would ask, how are you feeling today? How's your mom? How's your blood pressure? And it was sweet. You'd almost forget what was actually happening, but he needed that to that's how he felt as whole as he could. And we also made sure not to scare the other residents in
That's
the
such
facility.
a nice story. I actually have a story for you on that. I had a client and she loved shopping. Like that was her thing. She loved shopping,
Mhm.
and the best part of her shopping was to go out. When she went out to the mall, she would get she would sit down and have a cup of coffee. That was like her heaven. And when she became sick, her kids took away her credit card and she couldn't do that anymore.
Mhm.
And she went into this really mode of depression because of it. She felt really lost. So what they did was they got her this debit card. They put like a very small amount of money in it, and they told her sail away. And she would go like, they would know where she was going so she wouldn't get lost, but she would
Right.
go shopping as if she would go shopping. She would go and buy that cup of coffee because they had the amount of money in the debit card, and she would feel really good about herself. So that was also like a creative way of making her feel good.
Right, right, right. Not not all people and not all presentations of dementia can be fixed. Fix is not even the right word. Can be addressed
Absolutely.
quite as neatly, and even both of these situations, excuse me, require a good deal of thought. And is this the right thing? And are we misleading? And are we doing the right thing? And all of that, and then watching it in action and watching the smile on people's faces it was breathtaking. It was really, and she was probably quite the shopper, and he was probably an excellent doctor. But it helped them have some agency over their identity. And so I know that, again, as the daughter of someone who had a form of dementia, it's very hard to see the person that you have always known to do and be a certain way to be unable, or almost uninterested in being who they used to be, whatever that really means. It's really hard. And it's personally, you know difficult when people say my mom is dead, but you just went to visit your mom in the nursing. My mom's already dead. She's not here. So again, that's certainly not a judgment call on my part. Everyone gets to deal with their grief of their parent, their loved one, how they need to. But there are several deaths until the final one. And I don't mean to sound so poetic, but it's realizing that your parents can't do the things that they used to do, and realizing that they don't even know that they can't do it. And that's really a very hard part. That part of, they know that they're starting to lose their faculties, but they're aware that they're losing them. It's very painful. You're watching, again, a death within a death. Wait, I just did something I never would have done. What is this? My brain failing me? It's a very, I think, again, obviously as an outsider to the process, I think that's the way I see it, probably the most painful of it all, because you're grieving, they're grieving, and you cannot make it better. Um, it's also, what that person means to you. Someone recently said, the hardest part about losing my mom to this disease is she's the one I always went to. She's the one I always spoke to. And now she doesn't even know who I am. So her wisdom, her guidance, it's gone. And I would offer that it's not gone, it's locked up. It's tucked away. You still can't access it, and that might just be, wordplay, but it's just that piece, that part of the relationship is gone. Um, it just adds more and more layers to the dying process, to the dementia process. The other thing I think that everything adds to it is that dementia is often, I mean, obviously not exclusively, but it's an illness that affects the brain. Right? Obviously, ultimately, later on, it affects other parts of the body, but a person can be physically okay, and it's their mind that is not. So your body can do things, but your brain can't doesn't understand what's happening, can't incorporate it. And how do you tell your body, how do you struggle with that? That's painful. To have to redirect your, your dad who was a doctor to say, no, you can't go into these people's rooms. Even when he says, but I'm a doctor, they need my help. How do you argue with that? How do you, how do you, right? What do you do with that? Um, so people can have dementia for a very long time. Eventually, dementia will attack all the other parts of the body and the brain, more so the brain, different, coordination and breathing and all of
Physical
that. But
aspect, yeah.
what?
Physical aspect of your brain, meaning.
Right. It can be obviously, everyone's prognosis is different, but it can be a very long process. And that can also be difficult. Um, some of the questions I've also seen and heard and read are the family members watching their loved ones, feeling guilt and feeling again grief, and sometimes feeling anger. The woman who said, I can't be angry that my dad can't do things. I mean, he's the one deteriorating. How can I can walk here and drive here and talk, but he can't. I shouldn't be angry. And that's being really hard on yourself. You're not only are you allowed, it's very understandable. You're trying to have a conversation with someone who used to be able to have a conversation, and who you're talking to. You know that the face is there, the body's there, the scent, we all have a scent, the energy is there, but why are you not answering the way you used to? So yes, the parent is absolutely deteriorating, but parts of your relationship are too. It's really important to be honest with yourself. You're allowed to be angry, you're allowed to be frustrated, you're allowed to be sad, you're allowed to just not want to see them one day. You're allowed. It's okay and it's understandable. Everyone has that point where they need to breathe. And if you need to come up for air, have someone else visit them, or one day they won't get a visit, so long as obviously they have the care that they need. You need to be able to 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 take a breather, to be strong yourself, because if you keep going at it and going at it and visiting, even when you feel like your own head's going to explode, you're so frustrated, that helps nobody. It helps absolutely nobody, and can actually lead to some, you know undesirable reactions, because we all have a breaking point.
Absolutely.
All
I
have a
think you're
breaking point.
also sort of grieving a little bit. It's just you're grieving very slowly. It's a slow death until the person
Right.
actually passes away, and you're
Right.
slowly grieving as well as the person deteriorates, and that is what's causing, I'm assuming, a lot of the frustration.
Right. I've heard other people also say it's interesting. There's sometimes people play a very weird game of who has it worse. We don't have to compete. It's all good. We really don't have to compete. But sometimes we do it out of sort of misplaced care. I'm so sorry that, your mom died, but hey, at least, yeah, I'm sorry. I set that up the wrong way, right? I'm so sorry that, your mom has dementia, but I mean, at least you still have your mom.
Right.
Hmm. So, and then the person walking away going, oh my God, this is really hard, but at least I have my mom. What a terrible person I am. Okay. First of all, I have a very simple, reasonably blanket rule. Any advice that starts with at least, stop right there. At least she had a good life. At least she lived to this. At least it was a short illness. At least it was a long. Stop. Nothing good comes after at least in this. Don't say anything. So if you hear the words at least, reevaluate best. So if somebody has lost a parent and you, quote unquote, at least still have yours, you don't have to do that. You're allowed to still be frustrated and sad. You can also be sad for them. But again, it's not only the physical. It's not only, yes, it's nice to be able to touch your parent's hand, but it's also okay to look at that hand and see that it's maybe thinner, that the skin is, a little bit, almost see through, that the veins are, showing a little more, that the breathing is off. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to go, wow, this is really hard. it doesn't matter that somebody else lost a parent. Again, you don't have to compete for whose loss is worse. All loss stinks, right? For most people. Sometimes it's also okay if somebody loses a parent, and they've gone through this long process, and the person they once knew, physically they're there, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally, socially, they're not. I've heard some people say, I feel like a terrible person, but I'm glad it's over. You're not a terrible person. It's hard. It's really hard. It is very hard to watch somebody's abilities change, their personality change. Um,
But there's something
uh,
also that needs to be said, I think, about without the at least. Um, I think sometimes it is worth looking for other ways to communicate with that person when you can't communicate the regular way. For instance, as an example, music. Music. Some people who cannot talk, but sometimes
mhm.
songs that they remember, usually in their teens, will bring out the words that they thought they'd never they had that they thought they had forgotten would suddenly just come out. And you singing with them is just
Mhm.
communicating in another language.
Music there, I was incredibly fortunate to work with some incredible music therapists in hospice. And I used to say, you guys are magicians. They're magicians because it's not just, and they would get their feathers would get very rightfully ruffled. No, they're not just walking around. They're not the wedding singer walking from patient to patient going, hey, can I sing you a song? No, it was very much therapy. It was singing songs or playing songs or appreciating songs with them that are things that the person actually can connect to, can relate to their original language. I will say that when my mom was ill, I was working, and I was anxious. I was anxious about what the doctors were saying, all of that. And I was sitting down, I was chatting with one of my coworkers who's a music therapist, and she is not Jewish, but she knows that some of the clients and some of the patients we'd worked with were Jewish, and she needed to know like Hava Nagila and some real basic Jewishy things. And so she said, in the middle of the conversation, it was like a little disjointed, and I remember feeling it. She said, Rachel, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know what? I have to play this song for a client later. Can you just go over I just really need to know the words. It's a little weird. Like, did you just shut me off? But like, all right, okay, you got to do it. And we started to sing Hava Nagila. And she said, wait, can you say that part again? And she was playing it slowly and watching me. And at one point I stopped and went, did you just music therapy me? And she said, yes, I did. Yes, I did. I was like, you music therapy me? She's like, let's go with Hava Nagila. And I went right back. And I was calmer and I was more relaxed. She said, Rachel, I'll never forget the words to Hava Nagila. Good Lord, everyone knows. If you've been to one wedding or bar mitzvah, you know the words to Hava Nagila. And she said, I just saw that you needed to calm down, and I knew that I could connect easily. And yeah, she admitted she pulled a fast one on me. Um, that's not music therapy is not about pulling a fast one, but I knew too much, so she needed to pull a fast one on me.
Right,
And it
right.
was, and let me tell you, I started singing Hava Nagila, and it worked because I connected. It's the song everybody knows. She had her guitar, she matched her strumming to my breathing. I wasn't aware. Then I started to breathe in unison with her rhythm. I didn't know I was doing it. She was taking notes the whole time. And I got off. I remember we were sitting facing each other, and I remember standing up and feeling like, okay, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And
Therapy is
so
amazing. It's
it's,
really
and
amazing.
I said, you're a magician. You just did. She was like, I didn't. I actually went to school to do this. I was like, I know, but you're also a magician because it was incredible. So music is a really big connector. And even if, with that, and I was actually going to tell you something about my mom, even if the music is maybe not your favorite, it doesn't matter. I don't think that my friend sings Hava Nagila every day. I don't. But it's you're reaching out and connecting to them. So even if it's something that's old, something that you haven't talked about or done in a long time, you never know what that can open up. So like I said before, some of that wisdom or that guidance can be kind of locked up as opposed to like gone. Music can sometimes unearth that. Not all the time. It's not, in fact, an actual magic trick, but it's, if nothing else, it can create a moment, just a moment where you're just in that moment. And it doesn't matter who remembered what they did yesterday and whether they were a doctor or a nurse or the woman in the laundry room, you're just in that moment together. And that's really powerful too.
Absolutely.
Um, so I was going to say also that, speaking of music, when my mom was things were starting to fall apart, she had asked me, to get something from the musical refrigerator. I don't think I'm ever going to forget this. And I just laughed. I was tired. I was exhausted. I was physically done, emotionally done. And all of a sudden, Rachel, go get me something from the musical refrigerator. I was like, what? And I stopped for a moment and I thought, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. My mother loved music. She also liked to eat. So eventually I don't know what I think I sang names of food. I don't know what I did, but there was no point in saying there's no such thing. Maybe there is, I don't know. But you want the musical refrigerator? You want the lasagna I'll make the lasagna thing. I don't care. We were in the hospital. There was no fridge. But she needed me to go with that. What did that mean? Neither of us really knew. And she was insistent. Okay, there's a musical refrigerator. What, I'm not going to lose out if I say, sure. You don't have to fight them. No, you can't do that anymore. No, you can't get the coffee. You can't go shopping anymore. You're not a doctor anymore. You're a patient in a nursing home. Mom, you don't have, I get it, that urge to say, stop, this is not real life anymore, can be really potent, but it won't hurt anybody if you go with it. Go with it.
Absolutely.
Just go.
I
Just
will
go with it.
have, I have an example. I think have to end soon, but I'll just end with an example. Again, one of my clients, her mother, had very severe dementia and she was in a home and my client was already living abroad. And, one day the nursing home called her and said, listen, we have an issue because your mom is insisting that she needs to leave because she needs to get her daughters from school and she needs to leave right now and she's really panicky. Can you talk to her for a minute? And she was very smart, my client. She spoke to her mom and she goes, she didn't call her mom. She said, Mrs. Whatever, so and so. It's okay. I got you. Today's my turn to pick up your kids. You don't have to worry about it. You have time. You
Mhm.
can just, relax. And that is what calmed her down because she just went with it. She went
Sorry,
with
my phone just went off. Sorry.
she went with
Sorry
it.
about
She
that.
didn't argue about it. And that was extremely helpful to lower the anxiety that her mom felt. She felt like somebody
Right.
was listening to this pain that she's feeling.
And that's it. Just validate what I'm feeling. Nobody said to her, come on, your kids are grown-ups. Her daughter validated her. And I'm sure it was really hard.
It
I'm
was very
sure
hard. It was very
it was
hard.
really hard. But what she did was, in that moment, look, a lot of taking care of our parents, unfortunately, requires a level of sacrifice. I'm not going to say there's no sacrifice. I'm not going to tell you what to sacrifice, but she sacrificed that moment of her emotional whatever and made sure that her mom felt validated. What she also did is prevent mom's distress and her ultimate distress, because then she didn't have to deal with these are the things that can spiral into major behavioral outbursts. And by saying, Mrs. Goldberg, I got your kids, it was my day. Oh, thank you so much. And it's over. It's over.
Exactly.
It's over in that moment. It's over in that moment. Um, Before we go, I just want to add one more point. Sometimes people think that um, personalities are going to change, right? Their identity was always, they were so loving. What if they become mean? Generally speaking, who you are is truly who you are, right? Dementia isn't some weird switch that makes nice people into mean people and mean people into nice people. People are really who they are at their core. There are times when there can be a change. The really sweet, loving grandma who's always been, I'm so happy to see people, can be a little bit more feisty or frustrated. I'm tired. I don't understand what's happening in my body. And now you've all come, all, 12 grandkids have all come to give me a hug. Like, stop touching me. I don't understand it. I don't have the words to say, get off of me, because I don't know how to tell you I don't want to be touched. So it could come out as like, get away, leave me alone, right? You're talking about loss of words, you're talking about loss of social skills, right? So it can seem like, oh, but grandma always loved me, and she still does. She just doesn't have the words or the impulse control to say, not now, sweetie. So keep that. It's hard. Again, it doesn't mean, now her personality's gone. No, it can mean other things as well. Last, on this note, and I'll leave you with this, again, related to my mom. Um, my mom was a feisty lady, very feisty lady. And talking about particularly difficult emotional things was, probably not her favorite. I would say for a lot of us, it's not her favorite. Um, but there were certain things that were really difficult, really like, don't go there, just don't go there. And the last time I saw her, and I knew it would be the last time because we didn't live in the same country, I was blessed and grateful to be able to say things I wanted to say. Not bad things, but with all the stresses that we had, to say, I'm so, you taught me strength, you taught me this, you taught me that. And what I saw in her, I'm gonna try to do this without crying. Again, my mom was a tough cookie, tough cook, but I knew from things that she had experienced, she was really, in many ways, a scared young girl. And what dementia did, and I really do believe it was this, is that she was the softest spoken, and in some ways a little too honest about things she liked and didn't. I took that with a grain of salt, but was it was a different level of honest I had ever seen. She wasn't as defensive. She was welcoming to the conversation. Um, she was, I wouldn't say brutally honest. She didn't know honest from dishonest at that point. And she knew who I was. And she didn't question at that point why I was crying, which was also very unusual. And she let me give her this big hug and kiss and smush more than ever before. I knew I was saying goodbye. She just said, "Oh, we'll see you later." That's how we ended it. But it was, she didn't have the need to fight her answers. They just came because it was the impulse, the defensiveness and the impulse control worked in our favor. And she could say thank you instead of, well, I had no choice. And it was a different level of pleasance I think I'd ever seen. So I wouldn't say that her personality changed. I mean, she wasn't an evil woman, she was a feisty. But that softness, I really, because I knew her, was under there, but had been tucked and tucked and tucked under, and it came out, and it was really a gift. So when people say, that's not my mom anymore, that's not my dad anymore, my grandma, I, I can't guarantee anything in this world, but I really do believe, both as a professional, as someone who watched it in my mom, um, and perhaps a person of faith, do with that what you will, that they're not gone. They're not gone. It's a slow death. It's an anticipatory death and grieving. They're there. It's just you're saying goodbye to those pieces of them. Um, their personalities are who they are. But it's a sort of a pulling away, a separation, the ebb and flow, and sometimes it just ebbs out, which is hard, but that's, yeah.
That's life, sort
Yeah.
of, sometimes.
Right, right. So
I think maybe, it's not losing a loved one to dementia, it's just trying to make a different kind of connection with your loved one who has dementia, and understanding that the person is still there, everything is still there. It's just sometimes difficult for that person to express himself or herself. Um,
right.
and maybe that is sort of more of a calming way of dealing with it.
It's, everyone, again, it's it's a lot of little deaths. And it's almost like watching them. It's not the best way to phrase it, but almost growing up backwards. A little Benjamin Buttony, which I don't love that metaphor so much, but you're they become, as we get older, we develop more skills. When you're a little kid, if you don't like food, a little kid, you can say, "Ah, that's yucky." As an adult, don't do that. Don't do that. Not if you want to keep your friends. Don't do that. And so they go backwards, because it's a simpler time in their head, but their experiences are still there. Their strengths are still there. You cannot see them. It's like you saw the potential as they got older, and then the potential, it doesn't go away. It gets, again, just sort of, tucked away. And but it's really important to honor yourself through the process, because it's much easier to say than do, and it's hard. It's another loss, but it's an intense struggle, and um I don't wish it on anyone. But you can learn a lot about them, and you can learn a lot about yourself. So
Okay, well, that's a good way to end it. That's a good way to end a session. You
there
can
you
learn
go.
a lot about yourself and you can learn a lot about them when you are slowly losing a loved one to dementia.
Right, right. So,
No really
well,
other
on
way to
that,
sugarcoat it.
well, I'm sorry.
And there's no really way to sugarcoat that.
No, no. So certain things are objectively not fun and not great and not, look, I keep saying I'll end with this time. It's like a Jewish goodbye, but I I've learned a lot of things about myself through the work I've done, through losing my parents. I would not have signed on for I can't wait to learn these lessons about myself. If it was have my parents here or learn these great lessons, I think we all know which I would have chosen. But because that is the way life is, at minimum, I'm grateful that I also got the lessons. Because I wasn't, I don't love that I was put in this, group of folks who, you're the lesson learners without parents, over there. But here I am, and I get to choose what I do with that. And so you know, I'm a social worker and do things like, talk on podcasts about it. So
And we love you for it.
thank you. Back at
Well,
you. So,
another wonderful, informative podcast, Rachel. This has
there
been
you go.
good. Um, don't forget to share this conversation with anybody you feel might be useful. And looking forward to seeing you guys in our next talk. Have a good one.
Yes. You too. Feel good.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.